I'm a partner at Harper Meyer in Miami, and I specialize in business and general aviation.
Can you talk to me about what are the things that you need to look at before you purchase an aircraft? I know closing location is one, but there are some others, and maybe you could address all of them.
For sure. So first, we should discuss sales and use tax because they're generally it's the same rate generally that you're going to be taxed at, but so the sales tax is based on the physical location of the aircraft at closing, but and that can be fairly easily avoided if close in you can just move the aircraft to a state that either doesn't impose sales tax or a state that has an exemption that you can work with, like a flyaway exemption if you're not a resident of that state and you're going to take it out of that state. Or some states also have minimal sales tax amounts, like South Carolina, North Carolina, where you could just close there. But the other issue is that just because you've escaped the sales tax prong doesn't necessarily mean that you've escaped the use tax prong. So every state is different, as you said. It's like each one is their own kingdom and imposes their own rules. But generally, use tax is based on where aircraft are. They're based on where aircraft are stored, frequently used, consumed in the state. So you'd have to think about before you're purchasing this aircraft. Okay, where am I going to be basing my aircraft? Where am I frequently going to be flying my aircraft? Because every state is different as to when their nexus would attach for use tax. So you'd want to look into those different states where you would be, where you're basing the aircraft, where you're generally flying the aircraft, and then see if there's any exemptions that are available to you. There are sale for resale exemptions where you purchase the aircraft for the purpose of leasing it to a lessee, and then you can defer your sales tax by paying the amount on the lease payments, and that can be even further reduced if you're structuring it in a certain way. That of course would involve registering with the relevant Department of State. And there's also different commercial use exemptions, like if the aircraft's going to be primarily used in charter. Of course, you have to be careful because different states define what the commercial use is differently. Florida, for instance, doesn't include charter operations within its commercial use exemption. So there's a number of different exemptions that can be utilized within different states for the use tax purposes. But it's important to figure out what those are from the beginning, so that way you can take care of all the different formalities.
What about if I want to register an aircraft outside of the United States? There's so many different registries where I can register an aircraft. So first of all, what's involved in that? And then secondly, as a US citizen, why would I want to do that?
Well, it depends on the jurisdiction where you'd be registering. Some jurisdictions like the US have citizenship requirements. Others don't. Others, it's easier to register even if you're not a citizen. Some registries are owner registries like the FAA. Others are operator registries for the registrations in the name of the operator. There are benefits to certain foreign registries. You'd want to look for confidentiality, just more hands-on customer service with that registry. And some might not have the same level of operating restrictions that the FAA does. But again, you'd want to consult with local counsel in that jurisdiction to make sure that you're doing everything in a correct manner.
Liability wise, what are the most important considerations to have in a purchase agreement or when putting together an operating agreement for an aircraft? What are the things that could really get someone in trouble?
Well, the main thing would be operating as a special purpose entity under Part 91. As I mentioned, or as we discussed, that could potentially invalidate the insurance policy. As far as liability goes, the entity with operational control has the responsibility for regulatory compliance and is also primarily liable if there were to be an accident or an incident. So you want to carefully structure who the operator is. You want to make sure that you have a good insurance policy. That's your first line of defense. You want to make sure that whoever's supposed to be the named insured in that insurance policy, whoever's operating the aircraft is the named insured and everybody's covered. That's the main thing when it comes to the operational side.
What about on the buyer side? What kinds of things should I be making sure of? I know one thing is having a clear title. Can
Oh,
you
yes.
talk a little bit about that or any other items that would come up from a buyer's side, protection from liability in the future?
Right. Well, when it comes to for the buyer side, you'd also want the same sort of indemnification that the seller would want. You'd want indemnification based on, events that occur on or prior to the closing. Additionally, say you're exporting, you're buying an aircraft from Europe, from overseas, and importing it over to the U.S. You want to make sure that all the customs formalities were complied with for exporting. And depending on how the transaction is, say that the seller is bringing the aircraft into the U.S. For inspection, you want to make sure that the seller complies with the import requirements because they need to import the aircraft for customs purposes before doing that. But you do want to do your due diligence ahead of time and make sure you check all those different registries where any liens could be filed.